Welcome to episode 27 of 1530. Today we're going to be talking about the tennis world and really the lack of tennis in the tennis world. We'll be talking about the impact that COVID-19 is having on all the players and the fans and all the different tournaments that have been missed. But first off, today we want to cover the stat of the day. The stat of the day is 56 days and counting. And that is the amount of time it's been since a tennis match has been played by the ATP. The last matches were the final at Dubai, and the same day was also the final in Acapulco. So Djokovic won in Dubai over Tsitsipas, and Nadal triumphed in Acapulco. So 56 days and counting. We know it's going to get even longer because it's, I believe tennis is on hiatus until at least June. Wimbledon has officially been canceled for the first time since World War II era. The French Open kind of controversially said, hey, we're going to play the week after the U.S. Open, basically. And everyone said, you didn't talk to us about that. So that was interesting. And then
That's
the U.S. Open.
When you get the French involved.
That's right.
Just
They're like,
joking.
no, we're just going to do it. Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, as a Nadal fan, you should definitely be stoked that maybe that's the game of the year.
Yeah.
But, and then the U.S. Open right now is slated to be played, but I've heard that the officials are taking it kind of day by day, week by week, seeing if that tournament's still going to happen because, of course, New York City especially has been the hardest hit area in the United States as far as COVID-19. So there you go. There's tennis in a nutshell right now. Not much is going on. But Matt, can you talk to us a little bit about who does this benefit most, you think, from the different players aspect?
Yeah, well, I think the answer is clear. I think obviously Roger Federer is getting the biggest benefit out of this for a couple of reasons. He announced that he was getting surgery right before all this went down. Maybe he had some involvement in it. Nah, I'm just joking.
Perfect timing,
yeah,
for real.
Yeah, so he's got plenty of time to recoup. It keeps anybody from getting close to his slam tracker number while he's in bed rest. So, and it gives him time to rest. And obviously, that's a benefit for all three of the big three to be able to have this time to really relax. But I would say definitely Roger is the biggest beneficiary here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would probably say my answer is the big three, but Federer being the top of the list. Because like you're saying, Federer's constantly been shortening his schedule, right? He often isn't playing clay that's been true except for last year. He did just play the French Open. But then even the hard court season in North America, he's been playing maybe one tournament, if that, before the U.S. Open. And sometimes, again, he'll just play the U.S. Open, and then he struggles in the U.S. Open. So he's constantly trying to make his season shorter. And this right here kind of made it shorter. I mean, I know he maybe didn't wish it, but it does work out great for his recovery and his surgery. So hopefully he can be back healthy. Like you said, Nadal was probably ready to notch number 20 and equal Federer here in May, but that's not going to happen. All right. The French Open, if it's played, will be played in September. So definitely, like you said, favors Federer, but also I would have to go Djokovic, right? So you're thinking about 56 days. This is actually longer than the typical offseason for one of the top guys, right? You think about the ATP finals, it's played in the month of November, at the end of November. Usually they have December off, and then January, right? They're practicing, they're in Australia doing the pre-tournaments before the Australian Open. So really, we know Djokovic especially has been amazing in Australia. He's the most Australian Open titles. He does really well for focusing on the offseason and then getting ready to play and be focused for the next tournament. So I feel like this is kind of another offseason. It will be much longer than a normal offseason with no play at least going through June. But Djokovic is good when he has time to kind of reset and focus. The long season, sometimes he can lose focus. And then same with Nadal, right? I mean, he can struggle with injuries too. He has made mention that he hasn't hit a single ball during this time, which is interesting, but I'm sure he'll be fine. Again, I think he's going to be grateful that his body's not being taxed, even though he's kind of missing out right now at the start of the clay court season. So what about the other players, though? What do you think about the others?
Well, so that's the interesting thing, right? I think this is a benefit to the big three for those reasons, but also a benefit because I think of, probably anybody on tour, the reason that these three have been so successful is that they are able to maintain such an incredible focus through any aspect of their lives. And so you look at this and you have this weird circumstance that comes into play where people are, sheltering in place and social distancing. Complete routines are just being completely thrown off. So it makes me wonder if maybe these, guys on the lower tiers coming up behind these big three, if they'll be able to, that's assuming that the big three will be able to weather this no problem. But I think they have a bigger chance of doing that than anybody else, really. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody else can really maintain the focus that they need, be able to maintain routines, and I know we talked about previously about some of these young guys coming into the very beginning of the season, maybe coming in hot, feeling good and feeling ready for a good season to break out, and suddenly you're hit with this COVID-19, and any momentum that you have building is gone, and you have to start from scratch again. And so I have to imagine for anybody outside the big three, this is a negative.
Yeah.
But whether it be finances and funding your career or whatever it may be, it's, physical fitness, mentality, on all levels, I can't imagine this is a benefit for anybody other than the big three trying to get rest and get ready. But.
Yep. I think one area where Djokovic is maybe disadvantaged is with the number one ranking. So Roger Federer holds the most weeks at world number one, not consecutive, just total at 310 weeks. Pete Sampras is number two, barely right now at 286 weeks. Djokovic is right on Sampras's heels at 282 weeks. So the decision has been made by the ATP that they're not going to credit those weeks to world number one since no tennis is playing, which makes sense. Despite kind of hearing some people were saying it's controversial. I don't really think so, right? No tennis is being played. So I think that does hurt Djokovic, right? He is chasing a lot of Federer's records, and I think he would have loved to get a few more weeks under his belt because he would have stayed world number one regardless of what happened, at least up until the end of the clay court season. He did have a lot of points. So just another something that's interesting. Though overall,
but
I
the
think
other people's points haven't changed either.
Nope. Yep. So it helps it helps the younger people. It helps everyone else. But just as far as getting the record book is all it is.
Yeah.
Is chasing that record.
He has to wait a couple more months to get in the record books.
Exactly. But I agree with what you're saying about the young guns. I wonder about players like Thiem or Medvedev who play a lot of matches during pretty much the whole year, and they don't really take much of an off season. They're just constantly playing. They're constantly entering tournaments week after week. They're kind of rhythm players. I wonder how they do coming back into this. I wonder how any player does. If how is Dimitrov going to play? Tsitsipas, like you kind of alluded to with the work ethic. I wonder if these players are going to be able to train and stay physically fit, stay ready to go, or if they're going to kind of come out playing rusty and have opportunities to be upset and maybe drop in the rankings. So I think this is really kind of an unknown. Like I'm saying, this is unprecedented to have all these tournaments canceled, and we will have a longest off season that the ATP has seen. So,
well, real quick, going back to that point, you talked about Fed trimming down his workload over the past couple of years. I wonder if he will increase towards the end of this year if tennis does start back up when they're expecting it and hoping it does. I wonder if he'll increase what he was originally planning on doing, or if he'll just leave it. I wonder if he'll enter any other more minor tournaments that he normally would have passed up had he played a full year.
Yeah.
Just a random aside, but
yeah, especially because when you recoup, he wants to get match fit, and I think that's what he said last time when he had the surgery. He entered Australia. He's like, I think I'm ready, but I mainly just did it to make sure I was match fit. He was kind of expecting to lose that quarterfinal match, especially to Nishikori, that 5-setter. He's like, I would have been totally happy with it because I just needed some matches to get match fit. Of course, he won that match, beat Nadal in that epic 5-setter to win his 18th major at the time. So you never know. Like you're saying, he might just want to get a couple of matches under his belt. But I think it'll be really interesting to see if we're even going to have a single Grand Slam this year. And what much is even going to be there to play for. Like maybe Djokovic and some of these guys will lose a little bit of motivation because there's not much to play for. So I don't know what to say, except for it'll be interesting to watch. That
it will be. I don't know. Obviously, this is personal opinion. I think that we'll see at least one Grand Slam this year. I don't know. I think things are going to start opening early summer, late spring, mid-May, June, and then you give it some time. I think we'll see at least one Grand Slam. That leaves you half the year. I don't know. It will be interesting to see. Obviously, this is all unprecedented.
Yeah, and then maybe the U.S. Open
concerns and
become. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say nobody wants to be in charge of an event that leads to an increase in pain and suffering, right? And so with that aspect, maybe they'll just all err on the side of extreme caution and say, hey, let's just start this up later. But
yeah,
I mean, at some point, things are just going to happen. And so
absolutely,
it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and maybe the U.S. Open becomes almost like the Australian Open, right? Where everyone is so eager to play because it's, the first major after an extended, off season. So we could see people like Federer or Djokovic playing better there than they usually do because end of the season they kind of peter out, especially Federer physically. He's just not been himself the past, several years really since 2015 in my book. But at the U.S. Open every year, he looks pretty hobbled. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And it'll be interesting if the French Open will actually go off at the same schedule that it says. Like week after the U.S. Open, you're going to expect people from the hard court in America to fly over to Europe where it's going to be cooler to play in that late September timeframe with no real warm-up tournaments. I question that plan, and if maybe someone will insert a clay tournament there, or if that's just wishful thinking by the French. But
that'll be interesting. Maybe they're just banking on Nadal going no matter what, and hoping that he can bring everybody.
Yeah. Well, I was even reading someone's like, Nadal would even skip the U.S. Open maybe, which I don't think he necessarily would, but maybe lose out early in a close match where he's like, I don't know, kind of on the cusp and loses, gets upset and isn't too mad about it because it gives him time on clay. I don't know if that plays into the psyche, but
that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
time will tell.
It's too far away to tell, but of course, we're on the show. We like to talk about the future and the upcoming year, so we can speculate a little bit.
Yes. Obviously, we have no clue what's going to happen. None of this is doctrine.
Let's see who else as far as players go. So we were talking about Medvedev. He was the one that made the U.S. Open final last year. I know Russia's starting to get hit pretty hard. I just wonder where a lot of these players are at, even though I know, a lot of players. I don't know about Medvedev in particular, but like Djokovic, right? He doesn't usually live in Serbia. He spends most of his time in Monte Carlo. Right. Federer does usually live in Switzerland, but also has a place in Dubai. So a lot of these players that are well off have multiple homes and stuff. So I just wonder kind of what their game plan is and as far as training and where they're living.
Places, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even though I know travel bans, it's a little tricky, but
that's true. Europe's a little bit crazier.
Yeah. I do think this also, just back to your point about more rest, I think this also benefits the older players such as Stan Wawrinka, who has showed some flashes of brilliance since coming back from injury, but really hasn't made a deep run at a slam. So I think this could benefit him as long as he is putting in the work. I think this also could benefit players like Del Potro, who constantly struggle with injuries. Andy Murray, maybe, if he's putting in the training. But I'm not sure about Andy. It's been tricky for him. I know he's still in some pain even after the surgery. So I don't know. I don't know if it could benefit these guys. More time to rest, more time to recover physically. And maybe they can give it a go. It's like, hey, it's a lost season anyways. Why not just try to go out there and play some good tennis?
Right. Absolutely. And that is an interesting thing, though. I mean, it's time off right now. But in the scheme of things, you've lost Wimbledon. So you've lost one chance at that major. And you're only ever going to get older. So you've got Djok over here trying to surpass Rafa and Fed. Well, he just lost a chance at Wimbledon for a trophy there, And so, and obviously they all three and everybody below them has a good amount of time to play. There's plenty of time for anything to happen there. But they are lost opportunities at the same time. So in the immediate future, sure, this is beneficial for time off, time to focus, time to recoup, whatever. In the long term, you could make the argument that, hey, well, what could have happened had this been a normal season?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that with Federer. Like you were talking about how this is an advantage Federer. I do think it's advantage Federer in the end, but that is a year, like you said, another Wimbledon chance lost. And last year he had 2 match points over Djokovic. Could have easily triumphed there. Maybe this year he would have had revenge fresh in his mind, and then you kind of lose that edge. At least in the NBA, I know it's if the team that loses in the final, if they come back to the finals the next year, they usually win it statistically. Tennis, I don't know if it's exactly the same way, but it should give you some sort of mental edge. I had match points last year. I can win no matter who I'm playing against. So I wonder if that hurts Federer. He's 1 year older. We never know when he's going to retire. same thing goes with the Olympics, right? We haven't talked a lot about that yet, but the Olympics in Japan and Tokyo got pushed to 2021.
Right.
You know, that's the gold medal. Federer, it's eluded Federer for singles. He's gotten it with doubles with Wawrinka. And same with Djokovic. Djokovic hasn't even medaled at the Olympics, which is a crazy thought, right? Andy Murray has 2 golds. Nadal has a gold in singles. And I think doubles as well. But yeah, Djokovic doesn't even have a medal, and Federer has a silver, and that's it. It's kind of mind-boggling that Federer and Djokovic have kind of underperformed at the Olympics. And people like Nishikori, who had beaten Djokovic for a medal, and Del Potro, some of these people, they seem to overperform in the Olympics, which is best of 3, so leads to upsets. That's when Djoko was upset against Del Potro first round. But maybe that's something else for them to play for next year, and maybe we'll push Fed's retirement out. I don't know. It's hard to say.
That's interesting. What Wimbledon should do is some sort of like crazy tournament next year just to make up for it. Do like double elimination or something.
I mean, as long as it benefits Federer, I don't really care. I just want to look another Wimbledon trophy. I'm all for good competition, but I'm all
maybe they'll just give one to Fed. They'll say
an honorary Wimbledon.
2020, exactly. 2020 Wimbledon trophy goes to Fed because he has the most.
Well, he did do that cool advertisement for Wimbledon. I don't know if you caught that. He basically talked about how, you know, this year Wimbledon, you won't be able to queue up in the line. You know, you're gonna be at home, but you're gonna save lives. But it was kind of inspirational and showed kind of Wimbledon in the backdrop. But it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. I just hope, because I don't know if I've told you, but my wife and I were planning to go to Australia 2021. So we're gonna spend a week in Melbourne and do 2 days of tennis. I think we want to do the first or second round, and then we're gonna do a week of her side of the deal. She's a diver. That's what she does for work. So she wanted a week of diving in the Great Barrier Reef.
Oh,
so I get tennis, she gets diving, but I just really hope that Australian Open operates normally, which I think it will. I mean, we had fires last year, and now we have the COVID this year. 2020 has been kind of a hellish year.
It's a mess. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. I keep telling my wife her parents are working in France right now. And so we're going to go visit them at some point. I keep telling her we need to line that up with the French Open.
You're like, last week of May, does that work for you guys?
I think that's the only week that's going to work on my schedule. So.
There you go. Well, I mean, that would be great for you as a Rafa fan to see Nadal destroy somebody on the clay.
Anyway, that's great.
Well, let's see. What do we have upcoming? So we were thinking about for future episodes, right? We could obviously talk about, you know, more about thinking about how 2020 is going to go or how the young guns are going to go. But also we've heard from you guys that you guys would like to know about stats from like some of the epic matches in times past of like John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg, or even not too long ago, but still as my very first tennis match, which was 2008 Wimbledon final, Federer Nadal. So looking at some of those stats and some of those matches that have literally made tennis history. And so I think that's something we're going to take to heart and work on, because we got to give you guys good content, even though there are unfortunately no matches being played right now. So should be fun. Well, as always, visit us at cognitionsphere.com. And until next time, we'll see you on the court.